So cabinet ministers have been given orders by the presidency to deliver key priorities. This comes as the country battles a power crisis, unemployment, and continued governance failures. So is the presidency actually effective in holding cabinet ministers accountable? Let's try and pack this leg for you of the story and bring in Matthew Parks, Cosatu's parliamentary coordinator, who joins us via our video link this morning. Matthew, it's great to see you as always. Thanks for making time for us. You know, one almost feels like you could predict even just the tone and posture of the MPs yesterday before they took to the lectern. Already, for an example, there was the Hammanskraal cholera outbreak being used, at least in my view, to score political points. Did you feel that we were getting around to the business of the key priorities yesterday, or was it just another case of mudslinging?
Sadly, yes, we think it was another case of mudslinging. And we don't think it's just one incident. I think government and parliament often simply fail to realize the extent of frustrations of ordinary workers and the public at large. People are tired, and they're tired of hearing promises from government. Yes, there is some progress on some fronts which we must acknowledge. You know, for example, we have an SRD grant which has provided relief to about 8 million people who are unemployed. There's been a huge poverty relief measure. But then again, it hasn't been adjusted for inflation for 3 years, so it's being eroded. We have a presidential employment program which has provided opportunities for over 1 million young people to get their feet into the labour market, earn a salary, get some experience. But then again, government plans to end it next year. So we have these positive things. We also have and they get undermined quickly by silly own goals by our colleagues in government. We have a positive debt relief for ESCOM, which we appreciate. But still, we're sitting with 10 hours of load shedding a day. We're sitting with a railway network, Transnet and Metro Rail, being destroyed by criminal syndicates. Unemployment remains stubbornly high at 42%. So we had a 4% decline in it last year, which was very positive. So on some fronts we've done well. Other fronts at a macro level, we are still either treading water or deteriorating some worrying parts, like local government. And even when government has done well, they are just simply terrible at communicating it. And society is not unreasonable, but they want to get a sense of what's the plan, what's the time frames, what's the progress. But at times when you listen to ministers in government, they think we can PowerPoint our way out of a crisis, and we can't.
Sure. You know, and it doesn't help, I suppose, that yesterday's debate also came on the same day as the AG's latest report on how municipalities are performing, where we heard that only 38 municipalities actually received a clean audit across the country. It's a far cry from the kind of target any government should be proud of. And, you know, it almost felt like it was two different worlds. At the very least, you would have expected the tone, perhaps even of the debate, to be quite different, considering the fact that how municipalities perform has a direct impact on the lived experience of the very constituencies that put those MPs in those positions.
And we've been raising alarm bells for the last 5-6 years with Parliament, with government. The state and local government is shocking. A decade ago, only about 10% of municipalities were in financial stress. Today, it's about 90%. We have about 27 municipalities which no longer pay the staff on time, or deduct pensions and medical, but don't transfer those deductions. A year ago, that was only about 20 municipalities. We can see things are rapidly getting out of control. There's a consequence to workers. We saw when Clover, the dairy company, closed its plants in Lichtenburg, in Frankfurt, in the northwestern Free State. It plunged those communities, which are already very poor, into absolute poverty and despair. And that's going to become the trend. Many companies are simply going to close rural areas because municipalities no longer provide basic services. We have some, like Disopotla in the northwest, where they can't afford even to buy toilet paper these days. So it really is a crisis, and yet you don't hear anything from the provincial governments at all. It's just complete, utter silence. National government, you don't also hear much. And for some time now, we just don't hear much from Cogta, from Salga. I don't know if Salga still exists, but really it is quite worrying. We don't get a sense of raising the alarm bells by the relevant ministers. Things are deteriorating quite rapidly, and you just don't see action. You see the issue of roads deteriorating at a rapid rate in many rural areas. You don't see much action by the municipalities or by the provincial departments.
We really can spend the whole morning speaking about the many things that are going wrong in this country, and part of the obvious questions that come up is whether or not there's a plan to actually fix this. There are these grand macro, prognoses that are out there. You know, the African Union's Agenda 2063, the Sustainable Development Goals in this country, the National Development Plan itself. And I wonder whether you get a sense that A, we're able to keep up with these objectives, and B, whether they mean anything to people, again, who bear the brunt of our failures and dysfunctionality, and those are people on the ground.
Yeah. Society doesn't want to hear about PowerPoints. They just want to know, can people fix the potholes? Can they ensure there's electricity so people can feed their families, cook their food? They want to know, is there a plan to reduce the cost of petrol price, which is really pickpocketing workers of the small little salaries? We want to get a sense that the money that the government collects from taxes is not going to be pilfered. In many fronts, government just simply doesn't seem to get that picture, or doesn't seem to have an adequate response to it. But yet, to be fair to government, there are many positive things government is doing on many fronts. What I mentioned, the SOD grant, 8 million beneficiaries, the presidential employment stimulus, 1 million beneficiaries, with all of their issues, and there are issues, but they didn't go and communicate those positive things. During the period of COVID-19, over those 2 years of 2020 and 2021, we released 64 billion rand from the Unemployment Insurance Fund to help almost 6 million workers who had lost wages. But now it got shot with so many issues of chaos in the UIF that people then got irritated with it. But again, government failed to communicate that this is a positive thing from government side to help people, give people a sense, etc. So one doesn't understand, are colleagues in government just tired, or are they just complacent? What is the issue? Or they don't feel the brunt as ordinary citizens feel? But having said, there are ministers in government we know who are doing the level best, for example, on the trade industry front, to revive the clothing industry, or protect it rather, to grow the poultry, sugar industry and so forth. But we need to see the whole of government working together as a collective team. There are many positive things, but at times government just seems to find ways to commit own goals unnecessarily all the time.
Yeah. There's a perception in this country that, in fact, some of those colleagues in government, as you call them, are actually just completely removed from reality. There is really chilling levels of detachment. But part of what has also concerned many people is, there's always been this conversation about whether or not even just the cabinet is bloated in this country. And in the latest development, we heard of this plan to go to the UK to study how the government there works, so as to try hopefully implement some of those tricks here at home. And again, there's real questions about whether a physical trip that's likely to cost hundreds of thousands, if not more, to the UK is necessary in a context where, let's face it, that money could be used for something else.
Yeah, look, I think our problems are not that complex. As long as we don't know what the problems are, we know the issues of electricity, of transit, and metro rail. I'm not sure why the colleagues need to go to the UK. They don't have the same kind of challenge we have, that's for sure. I don't think they've got 10 hours of load shedding. I don't think they've got their railway network losing 742 kilometers of cable in a single year, or losing 2 billion rand as a consequence. So look, there is value in going overseas to learn from best practices, but I think right now our issues are fairly simple. Make sure government implements, make sure they spend the money which they have, they don't return the money to the treasury unspent. Make sure we tackle corruption. Make sure we have prosecutions and arrests and money's being returned to the state. We should be focusing on how can we build upon the success stories. So we have very positive, good news stories in the South African Revenue Service, where government gave additional money, employed an additional 500 staff, they invested in the IT capacity, they appointed competent management, they began to eradicate the corruption and mismanagement, which was growing at SARS at one stage. And as a consequence, we've seen that the value of investing in this public service, that there's been an additional 94 billion rand collected in state taxes. That's meant government could do many more things this year, plug holes, etc., give relief to the ESCOM and so forth. So we should be saying, how can we build upon those positive things and use that to turn the tide? How can we communicate those things to the world, to society? We did very well on the COVID-19 vaccine front, with all of our issues and all of the noise and the drama and all of that. But we managed to vaccinate the majority of people, and especially at very high levels, those who are elderly, those who are high risk and so forth. I think as a consequence, for a large reason, our death rates were quite low given our high infection rates and given the international comparisons of other more wealthy countries who didn't do as well as us, I think, in some areas.
Yeah.
But we don't communicate those things. We don't build upon those success stories.
Absolutely. Yeah, there certainly are wins, but one can also get over how easy some of these losses can be fixed. Matthew Parks, thanks for giving us your take. Appreciate your time on this Thursday morning.